Hello everyone and welcome to our story for today. We are going to read about a very famous person. His name is Sir Isaac Newton. He was a great thinker and a scientist. Many people say he was one of the smartest people who ever lived. His ideas changed the world. Before we begin, I have a question for you. What is your favorite subject in school? Is it science, math, or maybe something else? Please tell me in the comments below. I would love to read your answers. Now, let us begin our story about the amazing life of Isaac Newton. Chapter 1. A small boy in a small village. Isaac Newton was born a very long time ago in the year 1642. He was born on Christmas Day in a small village in England called Woolsthorpe. It was a quiet place with farms and lots of green fields. Isaac was born in a stone house called Woolsthorpe Manor. Isaac's father was a farmer. His name was also Isaac Newton. Sadly, his father died 3 months before baby Isaac was born. So, Isaac never met his father. This was a sad start for a little baby. When Isaac was born, he was very, very small and weak. He was born too early. No one thought he would live. His mother, Hannah, said he was so small that he could fit inside a small cup. But baby Isaac was a fighter. He survived and started to grow. For the first 3 years of his life, Isaac lived with his mother. But when he was 3 years old, his mother married another man. Her new husband was a minister named Barnabas Smith. He was well off, meaning he had some money. They moved to a different village, but Isaac did not go with them. He was left with his grandmother. This was another sad thing for young Isaac. He missed his mother very much. He did not like his new stepfather at all. Living with his grandmother, Marjorie, was okay, but it was not the same as living with his mother. He felt alone. This feeling of being alone stayed with him for a long time. It made him a very quiet and serious boy. He liked to be by himself. He preferred to spend his time thinking and playing alone. As a young boy, Isaac was not very interested in farming. The village of Woolsthorpe was a farming village. Most boys learned how to work on the farm, but Isaac was different. He liked to make things. He was very good with his hands. He made small machines and models. He made a small windmill that could grind flour. He made a water clock that told the time using dripping water. He even made a sundial which was so accurate that people in his village used it to know the time. He also loved to draw. He would draw pictures of animals, people, and ships. He filled his room with his drawings. He was a very creative boy. He was always thinking and observing the world around him. He looked at the sun, the moon, and the stars. He watched how things moved. His mind was always busy with questions. Why does the sun shine? Why does the moon stay in the sky? Why do things fall to the ground? These were the kinds of questions that filled the mind of young Isaac Newton. He was not just a quiet boy. He was a boy with a universe of questions inside him. Chapter 2. School Days and a Love for Learning. When Isaac was old enough, he went to the King's School in a town called Grantham. This was a few miles away from his home, so he had to live with a man named Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark was an apothecary, which is like a pharmacist today. He mixed medicines for sick people. Living at the apothecary's house was very interesting for Isaac. He saw many chemicals and strange liquids in bottles. He learned about plants and how they could be used to make medicines. This was his first real look into the world of science and chemistry. He loved it. He spent a lot of time watching Mr. Clark work. At school, Isaac was not always the best student at first. He was very quiet and did not play much with the other boys. He was often thinking about his own ideas and his little inventions. The other boys sometimes thought he was strange. But Isaac was very smart. He just needed something to make him interested. One day, a boy at school was not very nice to Isaac. This made Isaac want to be better than him. He decided to work very hard on his schoolwork. Soon he became the top student in the school. He showed everyone that he was very intelligent. He loved to read books. He studied Latin, Greek, and the Bible. But his favorite subject was mathematics. He loved numbers and how they could explain things. Isaac's mother, Hannah, had a different plan for him. When Isaac was about 12 years old, his stepfather died, and his mother came back to Woolsthorpe. She brought her 3 other children with her. She wanted Isaac to leave school and become a farmer. She needed his help on the farm. Isaac tried to be a farmer, but he was not good at it. He found farming boring. When he was supposed to be watching the sheep, he would be reading a book. When he was supposed to be working in the fields, he would be making a new model of a machine. His mind was always on science and learning, not on cows and crops. Luckily, the headmaster of his school, Mr. Stokes, saw that Isaac was a special boy. He knew that Isaac's talent was in learning, not farming. Mr. Stokes talked to Isaac's mother. He told her that Isaac needed to continue his education. An uncle also helped convince her. They told her that Isaac was made for greater things than farming. Finally, his mother agreed. Isaac went back to school in Grantham to prepare for university. Isaac was very happy. He could continue to learn and ask his many questions about the world. Chapter 3. The famous University of Cambridge. In the year 1661, when Isaac was 18 years old, he left his small village and went to the famous University of Cambridge. This was a very big step for a boy from a small farm. Cambridge was a place of great learning, with beautiful old buildings and many clever professors and students. Isaac went to Trinity College, which was one of the most important colleges in Cambridge. But his life there was not easy at the beginning. His mother was not poor, but she did not give him a lot of money. So Isaac entered as a special kind of student called a sizar. This meant he had to work for other wealthier students to pay for his studies. He had to serve their food and do other small jobs. It was hard work, but it allowed him to study at the great university. At Cambridge, Isaac was supposed to study the ideas of old thinkers like Aristotle. For a long time, people believed Aristotle knew everything about the world. But Isaac was more interested in the new ideas of science that were starting to appear in Europe. Thinkers like Copernicus and Galileo had new ideas about the sun and the planets. They said the Earth moved around the sun, which was a very new and exciting idea at the time. Isaac was a very quiet student. He spent most of his time alone in his room, reading and studying. He did not have many friends. He was a very focused and dedicated student. He read every book he could find about mathematics, astronomy, and physics. He filled notebooks with his thoughts and questions. He was not just learning what others had discovered. He was already starting to think of his own new ideas. He became very interested in mathematics. He studied the work of famous mathematicians and quickly learned everything they knew. Then he started to create his own new kind of mathematics. He called it the method of fluxions. Today, we call it calculus. This new math was very powerful. It could be used to understand things that are always changing, like the speed of a falling object or the movement of a planet. Isaac also became very interested in light. He wanted to understand what light was made of. He did many experiments in his dark room. He made a small hole in his window shutter to let in a single beam of sunlight. He then passed this beam of light through a glass object called a prism. He discovered something amazing. The white sunlight was not just white. It was made of all the colors of the rainbow. The prism separated the white light into red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. This was a huge discovery. No one had understood this before. Isaac was a different kind of student. He was not satisfied with just reading books. He wanted to test ideas with his own hands and eyes. He was a true scientist. He learned from reading, but he also learned from doing experiments and thinking deeply about the results. Cambridge was the perfect place for his brilliant mind to grow. Chapter 4: The Plague and the Apple Tree. In 1665, something terrible happened in England. A dangerous disease called the Great Plague spread across the country, especially in big cities like London. Many people got sick and died. Because of the plague, the University of Cambridge had to close. All the students and professors had to leave to stay safe. So Isaac Newton, who was now about 23 years old, had to return to his home in Woolsthorpe. He stayed there for about 2 years. For many people, this would have been a boring time. But for Isaac Newton, these 2 years were the most creative and important years of his life. He called it his Year of Wonders. Away from the university, he had a lot of quiet time to think. He did not have teachers telling him what to study. His mind was free to explore his own ideas. And he had many, many ideas. He continued his work on his new mathematics, calculus. He continued his experiments with light and colors. And he started to think about the force that rules the universe. There is a very famous story about Isaac Newton from this time. The story says that one day he was sitting in the garden at his home thinking. He saw an apple fall from a tree. Seeing the apple fall made him think. He started to ask questions. Why did the apple fall down? Why did it not fall sideways or even up? He knew that some force must be pulling the apple down toward the ground. He called this force gravity. In 1696, Newton moved from the peaceful university town to the big, busy city of London. He was given a very important job in the government. He became the warden of the Royal Mint. The Royal Mint was the place where all the money for England was made. At that time, there was a big problem with the country's money. Many of the coins were old and worn down. Even worse, many people were illegally making fake coins. This was a serious crime that was hurting the country's economy. Newton took his new job very seriously. He was not just a famous scientist anymore. He was a government official with a lot of responsibility. He used his brilliant mind to solve the problem of the money. He worked hard to reform the currency, making new, better coins that were harder to copy. He also went after the people who were making fake money, who were called counterfeiters. This was a dangerous job. Newton acted like a detective. He went to bars and other places in disguise to gather information. He interviewed hundreds of people to build cases against the criminals. He was very successful. He caught and prosecuted many of the most famous counterfeiters in England. 3 years later, in 1699, he was promoted to an even more important position, Master of the Mint. He held this job for the rest of his life. It made him a very wealthy man. His life in London was very different from his life in Cambridge. He was no longer a lonely professor. He was a powerful and respected public figure. He was very good at his job at the Mint and helped make England's money secure. In 1703, he was given another great honor. He was elected president of the Royal Society, the most important group of scientists in the country. He was the leader of the scientific community in England. He was re-elected as president every year until he died. Then, in 1705, Queen Anne gave him the special title of Sir. He became Sir Isaac Newton. He was the first scientist to be honored in this way for his scientific work. In London, Newton became a very famous man. People all over Europe knew about his amazing discoveries. He had come a long way from the small, quiet boy in the village of Woolsthorpe. He was now Sir Isaac Newton, a great scientist, a powerful government official, and one of the most famous men in the world. He showed that a person with a brilliant mind and a lot of hard work could achieve incredible things. Chapter 9. The Man Behind the Science. We know that Sir Isaac Newton was a genius. His scientific discoveries were amazing. But what was he like as a person? What was his personality like? Isaac Newton was a very complex man. He was not an easy person to know. For most of his life, especially when he was younger, he was very introverted. This means he was shy and preferred to be alone. He was fiercely private and did not like sharing his personal life or his ideas with others. He was incredibly focused. When he was working on a problem, he would think about it all the time, for days, weeks, or even months. He had a legendary ability to concentrate. He would often forget to eat or sleep when he was deep in thought. There is a story that a servant would bring him his dinner, and hours later, the servant would find the food untouched. Newton had completely forgotten about it because he was so busy thinking. His dedication to his work was total. He once said that if he discovered anything important, it was because he was very patient and thought about problems for a very long time. This intense focus meant he did not have much time for other things. He never married and did not seem to have many close friends. His work was his whole life. He could be very serious and did not laugh very often. He grew up feeling alone, and this stayed with him. He often felt insecure and was very sensitive to criticism. If another scientist disagreed with his work, Newton could become very angry and defensive. He had a famous and bitter argument with the German scientist Gottfried Leibniz. Both men had developed calculus at around the same time. Newton believed Leibniz had stolen his ideas, and he fought a long and angry battle over it. He could hold a grudge for a very long time and could be very harsh with people he saw as his rivals. However, he was not always a difficult person. In his later years, when he lived in London, he became a bit more social. He was a respected public figure and could be kind and generous. He lived with his niece, Catherine Barton, for many years and seemed to enjoy her company. He gave money to charity and helped his family. So, Isaac Newton was not a simple person. He was a brilliant genius who could see the secrets of the universe. But he was also a quiet, lonely, and sometimes difficult man. He was driven by an incredible curiosity to understand the world, but he was also very human, with feelings of pride, insecurity, and anger. Understanding the man behind the science helps us see a more complete picture of this incredible historical figure. He was not just a thinking machine. He was a real person with both amazing strengths and some weaknesses. Chapter 10. The Final Years and a Great Legacy. Sir Isaac Newton lived a very long life. He died in 1727 at the age of 84. In his last years, his health started to get weaker. He had some health problems but continued to work as Master of the Mint and President of the Royal Society. He was still one of the most respected and famous people in England. When he died, he was given a funeral that was fit for a king. He was buried in a very famous church in London called Westminster Abbey. This is where many of England's kings, queens, and most important people are buried. It was a great honor and showed how much people respected him and his work. The ideas of Isaac Newton changed the world forever. His work was like a bright light that showed people a new way of understanding the universe. Before Newton, People had many magical or mysterious beliefs about why things happened. After Newton, people started to see the universe as a place governed by natural laws, laws that could be understood through science and mathematics. His law of universal gravitation explained the movements of the planets, the path of a comet, and the tides of the ocean. For over 200 years, his theory of gravity was the way everyone understood the cosmos. It was only much later that another great scientist, Albert Einstein, added to Newton's ideas. His three laws of motion are still the basic principles of physics and engineering today. We use them to build bridges, design cars, and send rockets into space. His invention of the reflecting telescope changed astronomy, and almost all large telescopes used today are based on his design. And calculus, the new mathematics he developed, is essential for modern science, engineering, and economics. Isaac Newton was a true giant of science. He was incredibly humble about his own amazing work. Near the end of his life, he said something beautiful. He said, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." This shows that, even though he was one of the smartest people ever, he knew there was still so much more to learn. His life and his work continue to inspire scientists and thinkers all over the world. He taught us to be curious, to ask questions, and to look at the world around us with wonder. The small, quiet boy from a little village in England grew up to unlock the secrets of the universe and change the world forever. His legacy is the world of modern science that we live in today. I hope you enjoyed this story about the life of Sir Isaac Newton. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more easy English stories. See you next time. This was not a completely new idea. People knew things fell, but Isaac Newton had a much bigger idea. He wondered if this same force, gravity, was not just on Earth. What if gravity reached much, much further? He looked up at the moon in the sky. He asked himself, what keeps the moon in the sky? Why doesn't it fly away into space? He had a brilliant thought. Maybe the same force that pulled the apple to the ground was also pulling the moon towards the Earth. This was a revolutionary idea. He thought that the moon is always falling towards the Earth, just like the apple, but the moon is also moving sideways very fast. This sideways movement stops it from crashing into the Earth. So the moon stays in orbit, circling the Earth. Newton started to think that this force of gravity was everywhere in the universe. Every object in the universe pulls on every other object. The bigger the object, the stronger the pull. The Earth pulls on the apple. The Earth pulls on the moon. And the sun, which is the biggest object in our solar system, pulls on all the planets and keeps them in their orbits. This idea is now called the law of universal gravitation. It was one of the most important discoveries in the history of science. It all started with a simple observation in a garden. The story of the apple may or may not be exactly true, but it helps us understand how Newton's amazing mind worked. He could see a simple, everyday event, like a falling apple, and connect it to the great mysteries of the universe. Chapter 5. A Professor and His Telescope. After the Great Plague ended, Isaac Newton returned to Cambridge in 1667. His professors soon realized how brilliant he was. He had done so much amazing work while he was at home. Just 2 years later, at the very young age of 26, he became a professor of mathematics at Cambridge. This was a very important job. He took the place of his own teacher, Isaac Barrow. As a professor, Newton had to give lectures. His first lectures were about his discoveries in optics, the study of light. He explained his ideas about how white light is made of many colors. He showed his experiments with prisms. Some people found his ideas difficult to understand because they were so new. During this time, Newton also worked on building a new kind of telescope. The telescopes used at that time had a problem. They used lenses made of glass to make things look bigger. But these lenses did not focus all the colors of light in the same place. This made the image blurry around the edges. Newton had a clever idea to fix this problem. Instead of using only lenses, he used mirrors. He designed and built a new type of telescope called a reflecting telescope. It used a curved mirror to gather light and reflect it to a small, flat mirror. This second mirror then directed the light to the eyepiece for the viewer to see. His first reflecting telescope was very small, only about 6 inches long. But it was much more powerful than the longer telescopes of the time. It could make things look 40 times bigger, and the image was much clearer. In 1671, he showed his new telescope to a very important group of scientists in London called the Royal Society. The scientists were very impressed with his invention. They had never seen anything like it. Because of his amazing work, they elected him to be a member of the Royal Society in 1672. This was a great honor for a young scientist. Being a member of the Royal Society encouraged Newton to share his discoveries. He wrote his first scientific paper about his theory of light and color. However, sharing his work was not always easy for Newton. He was a very private person and did not like criticism. One important scientist, Robert Hooke, disagreed with some of Newton's ideas about light. Newton became very upset and angry. He had a long and difficult argument with Hooke. This experience made Newton very cautious about publishing his work. For many years, he kept some of his most important discoveries to himself. He was afraid that other people would criticize him or steal his ideas. He preferred to work alone, in quiet, where he could focus on his science without arguments. Chapter 6. The Great Book, Principia. For many years, Isaac Newton kept his amazing discoveries about gravity and motion mostly to himself. He was busy with his work at Cambridge and his other interests. He was a quiet man who did not like to argue with other scientists. But one day a friend came to visit him. His friend's name was Edmund Halley. Halley was also a famous astronomer. We know him today because of Halley's comet. Halley and other scientists in London were trying to solve a big problem. They knew that planets moved in oval-shaped paths, or orbits, around the Sun, but they did not know why. They could not find a mathematical reason for this movement. Halley asked Newton if he knew the answer. Newton calmly said that he did. He told Halley that he had already calculated it many years before. He explained that the force of gravity, which gets weaker with distance, causes the planets to move in those exact oval paths. Halley was absolutely amazed. Newton had solved one of the biggest mysteries of the universe and had not told anyone. Halley knew this information was too important to be kept secret. He encouraged Newton to write down all of his ideas and publish them in a book. Halley even offered to pay for the book to be printed because the Royal Society did not have enough money. So, for about 2 years, Newton worked extremely hard. He wrote day and night, often forgetting to eat or sleep. The result was one of the most important scientific books ever written. The book was called Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, which is Latin for Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Today we usually just call it the Principia. It was published in 1687. The Principia was a very big and difficult book filled with complex mathematics. In this book, Newton explained his law of universal gravitation. He showed how the same force that makes an apple fall also keeps the moon and planets in their orbits. This was a revolutionary idea that connected the earth and the heavens in a single, beautiful theory. The book also contained Newton's 3 famous laws of motion. These laws explain how objects move. The first law says that an object will stay still or keep moving in a straight line at a steady speed, unless a force pushes or pulls it. This is sometimes called the law of inertia. The second law explains how a force on an object makes it accelerate or change its speed. It says that force is equal to mass times acceleration. This means that to move a heavy object, you need more force than to move a light object. The third law says that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For example, when a rocket pushes hot gas down, the gas pushes the rocket up. These 3 laws became the foundation of modern physics. They helped people understand and predict the movement of everything from a small ball to a giant planet. The Principia made Isaac Newton famous all over Europe. He was now seen as one of the greatest scientists who had ever lived. His book changed how people saw the universe. It showed that the universe was not a mysterious place, but a place that followed clear and predictable laws that could be understood with mathematics. Chapter 7. A Man of Many Interests. Science was the most famous part of Isaac Newton's life, but it was not his only interest. He had a very curious mind, and he spent a lot of time studying other subjects that were very different from physics and mathematics. 2 of his biggest interests were alchemy and religion. Alchemy was an old practice. It was a mix of science, magic, and philosophy. Alchemists did experiments with different materials, especially metals. One of their main goals was to find something called the Philosopher's Stone. They believed this magical stone could turn cheap metals like lead into gold. They also thought it could help people live forever. Today, we know that you cannot turn lead into gold this way. But in Newton's time, there was not a clear line between alchemy and chemistry. Many serious thinkers were interested in it. Newton was very serious about alchemy. He read many old alchemy books and spent countless hours in his laboratory doing secret experiments. He had one of the best collections of alchemy books in the world. For Newton, alchemy was not just about making gold. He believed that the ancient alchemists knew deep secrets about God and the universe. He thought their strange symbols and secret language contained hidden wisdom. He was trying to rediscover this lost ancient knowledge. Religion was also extremely important to Newton. He was a very religious man and a Christian, but his beliefs were not the same as the main church in England at the time. He studied the Bible very carefully for many hours every day. He believed that the original message of Christianity had been changed over the years. He wrote many long papers about the Bible and its history, trying to understand its true meaning. In fact, he wrote more about religion and alchemy than he did about science. He kept his religious ideas very secret. At Cambridge, professors were expected to be part of the Church of England. Newton's private beliefs were different, so he had to be careful. For him, science and religion were not separate. He believed that God had created a perfect and orderly universe. By studying the laws of nature, Newton felt he was learning more about God's amazing creation. He saw the universe as a giant puzzle made by God, and it was his job to try and solve it. These other interests show us that Isaac Newton was a very complex person. The world knows him as the great scientist who discovered gravity, but in his own mind, He might have seen himself as someone searching for all kinds of truth, whether in science, alchemy, or the Bible. He wanted to understand everything, from the movement of the planets to the mind of God. Chapter 8. A New Life in London. After spending many years as a quiet professor at Cambridge, Isaac Newton's life changed in a big way.